The light is right here. Hi everyone, welcome. I'm so excited to be doing this live with you all today. I have like all my stuff set up here so we can make sure that we hit everything. Good morning, say hello. Hi, my name is Genevieve and I am going to be sharing with you today my Creativity Corner cleanup. If you're new here, the Creativity Corner is what I call my 100 square foot little piece of heaven in my house, which is my sewing room, craft room, office. It's a little bit of all those things because it's kind of just where I go to, I call it my tower in the house because it's where I go to retreat. But I'm so excited to share with you all. This has kind of been something I've been sharing the journey over on my Instagram stories of cleaning this and getting it ready for the new year. And I wrote a blog about kind of my process behind when I decided to do this. And so I hope that you'll check that. I do have the link in the comments as well as in the details of the video. I hope you'll check that out. And as you're getting ready to do your own Creativity Corner cleanup or reorganizing, that it'll help inspire you to get your space the way that you would want it as well. So come on in and say hello. I am so excited to just share with you all and spend the morning together. Usually what we are doing on these videos is we're sewing together, but I thought maybe this year we could just because I never know what my day is going to be like, and all of you know I'm not a super fast sewist. Maybe one of them a month will be a little bit more like a Q&A and a share, something that I'm doing as a sewist, because many of you know I do have my own fabric business. I hand dye fabric. We also design fabric, and we have a pre-order going on right now, but I am first and foremost a sewist, so I have all of the same challenges probably many of you do when spending time in my craft room, in my sewing room, and working on projects and so forth. But come on in, say hello, so we can get to chatting a little bit this morning. I do have some questions written down. I put over on my Instagram story. Feel free to ask me anything in the comments as well. It can be about organizing, that's perfectly fine, but it can be also about my fabric business. It can be about Apollo, which is my dog that many of you see here. It can be about family. It can be about my career history. Whatever you would like, feel free to pop some questions in the comments. Make sure that you like and subscribe. I am pretty close to 4,000 subscribers, which is pretty cool. So there's that. But I've been here on YouTube now, gosh, 2022 or 2021. I kind of don't remember. It all is such a blur, you guys. No, my daughter had started college, so yeah, it would have been 2021. It would have been the summer of 2021 that I decided I was going to sew on YouTube. I wasn't really sure. I had no idea that there was like this world here, just so everybody knows. I had no idea there was this world here. I had just got my Sailrite Fabricator, and I had found Lynn's Handmade, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to sew this on YouTube, because the one thing I think about all the time when I'm in my sewing room, and I'm sure many of you have this experience, I think about my grandmothers. I was raised by both of my grandparents, but on both sides. Both of them were amazing sewists in different forms. And when I was young, I never asked either of them to teach me how to sew. But as I got older, thank goodness, at least one of them was around to help me a little bit. But I still think today, like, gosh, I wish sometimes I could hear their voice while I'm here, or have them here with me when I'm sewing. And I thought if I could put myself out someplace where my children or grandchildren could hear my voice and see about my life and in the capacity of the thing I love the most, that might be a really cool thing. So that's kind of how I started here. So let's talk a little bit about organizing. Also, I want to say good morning to Christy. She's on the treadmill. Christy, good girl. I wish I was as dedicated there as I'm dedicated in here. I'm so excited to talk a little bit about organizing, and I'm going to share from my blog post. I wanted to share a little bit about kind of the three things that I feel are part of the process for me whenever I try to reorganize or rethink a space. I think many times, don't get me wrong, our spaces, especially for me, I feel my sewing room, I can't work in it if it isn't cleaned up. It doesn't have to be, spotless, but it at least has to be in a place where there's not a whole bunch of stuff laying around or clippings on the floor and things like that. But when we're talking about organizing, I think that's a whole process of like, you have to think about what are you organizing it for? And so I've at least noticed, and I don't know if you all have noticed this, but my sewing has evolved many times. It's changed over the years. When I first started sewing over 20 years ago, I mean, I didn't even have a sewing room then. It was my little tiny Walmart Brother machine sitting on our kitchen table in a trailer, because that's the first house we had together. And I had no place. Um, Girl, good for you, Christy. I had no really place to store anything because we were a very small family in a very small trailer. And if you've ever lived in a trailer, you know that every space is used. And so my sewing machine was on my kitchen table, and I mainly sewed for like home decor stuff. Like I sewed our curtains. I sewed, I think, some oven mitts, and like I sewed those sorts of things. I was just learning. Then when we moved into our other farmhouse, I did get my own room, and that's when I had my embroidery machine, and I did like children's costume dresses and things like that. So, the things I used for that are very different than what I have today. Then when we moved here, my sewing went back into our bedroom because our son had this room originally before we finished the basement. And so my sewing was kind of like on the side because I was working corporately and working for ethical fashion. And then when we went and started doing, when my son moved downstairs, this transitioned back into a sewing room. And so now I feel like having my fabric business, but still really wanting to focus on my sewing. And I have that time. I'm a empty nester. There's some evenings where I'm like, what do I do with myself? There's no games. It's very weird. I really wanted to like take this space from what it originally was in I think when I first moved into this space, it was like 2020. Yeah, probably 2020, because that's when I redid the cabinets and everything. Things have changed since 2020, right? So, yeah, we're not making masks. Please. Yeah, it's evolved. So when I decided this year, because one of my goals for 2025 was sorry for Apollo, it's Sunday, and if he sees someone in the cemetery, he loses his mind because he thinks the cemetery is our property, which is up over a hill. So anyways, yeah, so one of my goals was really like get back in my sewing room and like really spend time with all my machines. I feel like over the past 3 years since I got my Fabricator, I've just really, my Sailrite Fabricator, which is my industrial machine, I've really focused a lot on that. And I had bought a new, as you know, last week, I had bought a new domestic in 2022. I upgraded from a Singer 600 from the 1970s to a Bernina 475 QE. And then I also have a Singer Professional Serger, which I bought during the pandemic. And so I want to be able to use those more. I want to dive more into apparel for myself and my older children. I also am dabbling with quilting. So I wanted to kind of rethink this space specifically for what I want to do. And I would say that's kind of the first thing I would tell you if you're thinking about doing kind of revitalization, reorganization of your sewing space, is to maybe sit down and like ask yourself, and I have these 3 questions on my blog, but ask yourself, what types of projects will you be working on in this space? How has your sewing changed from maybe what it was 2-3 years ago? The things that I found in here, from mask making and all of that stuff, that's stuff that I don't necessarily need right accessible anymore, right? Apollo. Do I need to have like a larger cutting space than what I used to need to have? I mean, if we were just cutting out masks, you probably didn't need as big of a space as what you may need if you're going to be doing apparel cutting, right? So thinking about that. And then where are your tools and like accessories, things you're using all the time? Where are you storing them? Because I found what was happening for me as I was starting to change some of the things that I wanted to sew. I was digging for things. They weren't easily accessible. So those 3 questions are up on my blog, but I would highly recommend you ask yourself those questions because that really helped me, because it can be a big pill to swallow to like start. Even I only have 100 square feet, and that includes the closet. Even that felt like a big pill to chew, to be like, I'm going to overhaul and reorganize this. So if you can like ask yourself those 3 questions, I feel like that then gave me the motivation to just start. Didn't give me the motivation to get fully through it, but I'll share some tips about how I motivated myself to get fully through it. But yeah, those are 3 questions. I would definitely encourage you to write them down, like write some priorities down. I'm an Xennial, so if you know what that is, that means I am the little micro generation between Gen Xers and millennials. Some people call us elder millennials, but I don't agree with that. I definitely remember, I do remember things from the early 80s. So yeah, so I feel like pen to paper is just like so important. All right. So that's kind of the first thing that I would encourage you to do. Does anybody have, like, if you want to share them in the comments, I would love to hear, like, you know, like what types of projects do you want to work on in your space in 2025? Like, what are those projects? Is it different? Share in the comments for me, like just one thing, like your goal for this year is to finish a quilt top, or you know, like you have some bag making, like a bag a month, or you have your own crafting business and you want to do markets in the springtime. So like, what are your goals to batch, you know, projects? Like that's something also to think about. If, you know, like I said about, like, you know, do you need larger areas to cut? If you're batching, what do you need to like keep your batches of, you know, your projects organized for that type of, you know, goals? Let me look to see who's here. Good morning, Krista. So Krista is asking, any tips on sewing with corduroys? Corduroy needle, interfacing, how to check grain and pile. Found some vintage corduroy. Nice, that you'd like to use on a bag. So it depends on what the wale of your corduroy is. Probably like a mid wale if it's vintage. It probably isn't thin wale like what we have on our pre-order. I would definitely serge your ends if it's vintage corduroy and it's like fabric vintage corduroy. I would serge your ends if you can, serge your ends or zigzag your ends and wash it, because that will always give it kind of a new life before you put it onto a bag. Just like you would do with any type of non-poly fabric, I would also starch it with some type of Scotch Guard or something like that, because that'll help it in just like spot cleaning and things like that. But really, needle wise, I use a 20. I don't know what type of machine you're using, but I do use a 20 needle on my Fabricator. 18 to 20 is usually where I stay for bag making. If you're doing it on a domestic machine, I would say corduroy can get thick pretty quick. Thick pretty quick. It can. It really can. So I would definitely not put any of your interfacing in your seams if you're sewing it on domestic. And I would definitely look for a denim needle if you're doing it on your domestic machine. Corduroy has a very similar weave to denim. So I would definitely use a denim needle if you're doing it on a domestic machine. And then for interfacing, what I have done with mine so far is I have used a 101 just to give it, if you're not looking for like, if you're just looking for a real slouchy kind of 70s hippie type of bag, you could go with it. Depending on how thick your corduroy is, you could go without any interfacing, I would think. But if you're trying to build some structure with the bag, I would definitely use a 101 interfacing. You can use foams and all of that stuff if you really want more structure. But I've used a 101 outside of the seams. Just because, like I said, it can get pretty thick. If you have an industrial machine that you feel like can handle it and you're not binding it on the inside, then I would say you could probably be fine if you interface the whole thing. But I still try to just keep it out of my seam allowance with corduroy. All right. Kelly has 3 goals for this year. First and foremost, start recording myself for social media. That's awesome, Kelly. Everybody follow Kelly. I'm going to go follow you then, Kelly. The second goal is to get Christmas quilts done for my children. And the third goal is to put my designs on fabric. That's awesome. Kelly, we should talk. Definitely go follow Kelly. That's great. So I would say for you, like if you're going to film, it's definitely thinking about what type of lighting do you need? What type of setup do you want? That sort of thing. And that could totally be one of the videos I could share with you, my hokey setup, because I've recorded, I think I looked this morning, I have over, 60 some videos, and I have recorded on very little technical setup. And then quilting, Christmas quilts for your kids, that's really great. That's something I'm aspiring to that at some point. And third goal is to put your designs on fabric, which I could also share just some of my little tips and how I've done that over the next few months. So very cool. I'm wishing you the best of luck on your goals. Keep putting your questions or your goals in there. Share with me, because I feel like it's the other thing that can totally create motivation for yourself is sharing them with someone else, putting them out there. It gives you this little bit of accountability. And that is the one thing I want to build here in this community, is that we support each other. You can ask many of the people I've created friendships with in this community. One of my big things that I've learned in my years in fashion corporate world is it just makes no sense not to support one another. It just makes no sense not to cheer other people on. There is so much out there for everybody. There is not a finite amount of support and encouragement. And so why not give it? The other thing that I want to talk about, this is where I'll probably start doing some of like the tour of my sewing room, is to invest in practical but also stylish storage solutions. One of the things that really drives me insane, and it's like if I could build another company, is I feel like there really isn't a lot of fun or creative or non-masculine storage in the world. I feel like it kind of it immediately reverts to the guy in his tool room. And so one of the things I think for many of our sewing rooms is like, how can we maybe upcycle things to make them feel like us, like our brand, okay, whatever. It doesn't have to mean that it's your business, but just like your personality in your sewing room. And so I do think that it's hard sometimes to find that with organizing. It's getting a little bit easier, but I do feel like when I started doing this, I was like, oh, do I really need it to be just that? So find ways to make it also stylish. I'm going to show you now kind of some of my sewing room, and I'm going to have to flip this. Don't mind me being shaky. Okay, so storage wise, we're going to start over here in my little micro closet. So one of the things that's really difficult for me in only 100 feet which includes this little closet, is fabric storage. I don't have a whole lot of space to have shelves and to wrap my fabric and all of that fun jazz. It's just not a solution I can use. So what I decided to do was use hangers that are meant for like pants, and like other things that you could fold over in a closet. And I've done this since I moved in here. I'm pretty sure since I moved in here. I'm trying to think. Maybe not. Maybe 2020 was when yeah, maybe since I moved in here. And so I decided I was gonna just hang it. And so these are, I don't have this link on there, but I could put the link on there for you. I had purchased these type first, which are just like these slots. And to be really honest, I have like all of my heavy like wax canvas and stuff on those, and also like water resistant canvas on those, but it really doesn't, it slides off. So those like things that are thicker, it's okay for that. But like my quilt cottons or any other type of fabric that, just is not as thick as that. These here are much better, and they kind of lock in and then they hold the fabric in place. And I find that it's also nice because I can like organize it by company, or I can organize it by type of fabric. So that has really been the main way that I've stored my fabric here in this small little space. So when I decided this really did need a clean out. When I started, this was kind of where I started because I have cleaned this out multiple times before, and I felt like I knew I could handle it. I did change some things. So I have quilt batting over here because I used to make a bunch of these quilted pillows. Actually, that's the first video I ever made on my channel. If you ever want to check it out, it's like a quilted floor pillow. I used to sell a lot of them. So if you are someone who sews to sell, it is a good thing for markets. I have some wax canvas on a roll. I have blackout curtain fabric there, which I am going to use for curtains in here. And then this I moved. So this down here is all my interfacing and my interfacing scraps. I used to have my interfacing scraps in like a little popcorn trash can thing, and it was just overflowing. So I moved it to this little like crate bin thing. My Bernina case, my roller case, is back there, which I don't use a whole lot of. And then any of my foams and other interfacings are all folded along here. It's not ideal, but it is nicer than where I used to have them shoved in a corner. And it was always taking over everything. So that's pretty much like the closet. Other than up here, I just kind of organize, like all my serger thread is in there, my serger case, like any other little things that I don't need. Boxes of serger thread. That is an entire box of glue sticks because I used to be a Girl Scout leader. Anybody need glue sticks? Maybe we need to start doing giveaways. But that's my closet organization. Tell me, how are you guys? How do you store, like, what's your closet organization? Do you have a closet that is for your sewing room? How do you store your fabrics? Do you fold them on? I know a lot of people do like the foam board, kind of like bolts, but that just didn't work in my space. Let's see if anybody has anything here. I'm gonna just put you down here a second. I'm sorry for all the movement. Let's see. Hazel says, good morning, Hazel. She'd like to finish a quilt she started last year and would also like to make at least a bag a month, but I would like to clean out all of your whips, all of your unfinished projects, right? So that's kind of my closet area. Then let me show you. So like I said, I moved in here in 2020, and so I can show you. So this 50s cabinet, it's a metal 50s cabinet. And then these here drawer cabinets, they actually, the nice thing about living on a farm and a family farm is there's storage trailers here that have things collected by everyone. And so in 2020, my mother-in-law and I, when I told her I wanted to do this room, she was like, well, okay, you need some storage. So we went down and rummaged through the storage trailers, and we found these 2 cabinets. My mother-in-law, who is a beast, she went out and she got all of the rust off of them. We painted them, and then my husband secured them in here. So because I really had nothing to be able to like store things in, right? But the thing about storage, closed storage in your sewing room that I really learned is that it's things you don't have to access all the time. It's stuff that you don't have to see, because if you don't see it, you're not going to use it. And so that also has been a big lesson for me in having a craft room and having a sewing room, is if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And so that was one goal for me in doing this renovation, so to say, was whatever was in cabinets or in drawers either needed to be something that I knew it was there and I knew I was going to use it all the time, or it was something that I was like, you know what, I don't need to see it, I don't need to know about it, but I want to keep it here, right, for the weird times that I might need it. So what I had, so this here also was one of the things we found in the storage trailers that I just repainted and covered with some of that, like, what do we call that? It's like tacky wallpaper stuff. And so that is where my patterns used to be. My patterns used to be in there. I'll open it up so you can kind of see. It's now, it's now the snack cabinet. I've decided that that's what it's going to be. So because it's out of sight, out of mind, so I'm not always going to be going for it, but there are those occasions. So that's what that is, but that's where my patterns used to be. And it was kind of a pain in the rear to like get down and like be pulling them out and like trying to find what I wanted to find, right? I also, if you watched my prior video, my patterns were just paper patterns that were all just clipped together with clips. It was just a mess. It was a nightmare. So whenever I would like go back to find a pattern that I really liked, that I wanted to redo, I was having to pull them all out, and it was a hot mess. So now what I did is I took the patterns, I binded them all. I have a binding machine. And those are all my bag patterns that I have printed out and have cut out. Okay. And then I have also some paper patterns here that I have. Those are all bag patterns. And then the top one is going to be for my apparel. But what I did with my apparel is I bought different coils. So like my red coils are going to be dresses. My green coils are going to be tops. And then there's like white coils and blue coils, so that like as I have other patterns that I cut out or have the instructions for, I can coil them with different colors and code them. Yes, there are so many ways to organize your patterns. And I think this also shows my age. Because I could totally organize them digitally. Like I have them all in my cloud, and I would like to eventually do that. I know a lot of people like organize them by designer or things like that. And I should really spend time to do that digital piece of the puzzle. But I still like, because I think I learned how to sew from a printed out pattern and like a paper pattern, I like having, there's many times I don't watch a video before I sew something. I just use the pattern, even though you probably all know me. I don't read the pattern. I just look at the pictures. But there are times where I just like having that paper pattern. So that's how I organized my patterns. If you have like a way that you organize your patterns, I'd love to know, especially digital. If there's a way that you've decided digitally to organize them. Let's see. Marie, good morning, Marie. Marie says she's installed adjustable wall brackets, then cut closet boards to size. Fabric is folded on half bolt style. Nice. You could totally do that in your closet. The top shelves are for bolts. Yeah, I could do that. I could do that. I feel, one of the things that I've noticed since I started dyeing fabric and selling it, as well as designing my own fabric, is I don't have a whole lot of yardage of fabric anymore. Even as a bag maker, I don't find I have a whole lot of yardage of fabric. So I feel like maybe if I start transitioning and doing more of the apparel and doing more of the quilting, I'm sure that that would maybe change a little bit. But yeah, that's a good idea for that shelf up there, if I could find space for the other things that are up there. I have some on comic boards and some just folded and stacked. Krista says it's all divided by type. Some is in the closet, some inside cabinets, some in an open shelf. Goal is to use the stash this year. Yeah, I think that it's really important, even as someone who has my own business who sells fabric, which this is my constant struggle, and I know I've shared that here with you guys. Coming from the ethical fashion industry, it's really difficult for me to be like, buy my fabric, buy my fabric, buy my fabric. Even though I'm in the business of buy my fabric. Just because I know we all love fabric and it can become an addiction for us. I do think it's so important to use what you have. You bought it at some point for a reason. I do also think there's a great thing about purging the fabric, and there are a lot of ways. And I would say the biggest way is to resell your purge to make money to go buy new stuff. Because I do think sometimes it can feel like that's old you, right? Good morning, Pauline. And the new you likes something else, right? Because like I said, I do think, I need a drink. I do think that your sewing evolves. And so the fabrics you loved 4 or 5 years ago, or even a year ago, might not be the fabrics you love right now. And that's okay. And I think it's okay to give ourselves that permission. I would say find ways to either donate it in a way that you know it's going to be used. I think that's really important. Or resell it, because there's plenty of people out there looking for a deal for fabrics. And so there's plenty of Facebook groups to resell fabric and things like that. So yes, donate to a quilt ministry. That's why I'm saying, like, donate someplace that it'll be used. I think that's really important because just donating it to, say, Goodwill or whatever, which is fine. I just think knowing where it's going to end up is also really important in my book. Okay. Hazel says, organize her digital patterns in her Google Drive by pattern designer. I just need a better way to organize physical patterns. I really love the binding, and like I said, I can't take the credit for the binding. There's my binding machine. I do have links on my blog for the binding machine and the coils and the backs and fronts. Katie from My Little Shindig is who gave me that idea, and it's genius, and I love it. So I've found investing in that binding machine, that was totally worth it. So yeah, definitely paper patterns. Same with patterns, fabric, deco pages, and plastic organizers to match my entry, and my patterns live there. I also have an app that all patterns are captured in, so I know what I have. Krista, what is the app? We would love to know. That's my millennial. I like any form of technology. All right, so closet fabric organization, that's that. One of the things I noticed when I made my pajama pants for my daughter on the live with on the Bob and Buddies live with Katie and with Jade a couple months ago, was I was digging in my old Singer drawers for things like elastics, things like, the apparel stuff that I used to use when I used to make dresses, when I used that machine. And so I was like, oh, if I'm going to start doing this, I'm going to need someplace else to put those sorts of things. and I had purchased some things that weren't going to fit there anymore. And I had them shoved up in this cabinet, which before that cabinet that I just showed you that had my patterns in, that had all of my webbing. It had, oh my gosh, it had stuff from when we still were doing the tents, the glamping tents. It had all this. It was just kind of a catch-all. It was just like, go in there, shut the door. And so what I decided I was going to do, and I'll take you guys off here again. So this here is my Aunt's Singer 600 is in there. And this is the sewing table that they came with. And this here opens up. Don't mind my trash can there. This here opens up and it has 2 drawers. I painted it to match it was in really rough shape, so painting it was the way to go. And so in these drawers here, I had a whole bunch of like the things I used to use, and that's where I was going. I was opening this, trying to find stuff. I also then realized this drawer here, which has all of like the sewing tools and stuff for my domestic, had all the sewing tools for the Singer, not for Miss Jasmine, the Bernina. So what I did was I reorganized this and put all my Bernina stuff in here, pushed all of the Singer stuff towards the back, or put it in those drawers down here because I'm not going to be accessing that anymore. And then I got this little cabinet thing, this little white cabinet. Now, right now it has some tape that I have to put away, but it has this little like flip drawer thing. And I decided to put my Singer, like, not my Singer, my Bernina feet here, because I kept going, like, trying to find this, opening this, and it's nice that it's, like, right there. I can pull it right out. I put all of my webbing, my 1-inch webbing, and my binding is in here. I figured any trims or anything that I get, I'm going to put in here. All of my elastics and Velcros, I'm going to put in here. And then this down here is all my 1.5-inch webbing. So this has been really nice. I really like it so far. I feel like it's really in a perfect area. So this little roller cart you can find on Amazon. I have the link for that up there for you all. So I don't know, how do you guys have your webbing? I feel like is just one of those things. It's a really weird, like, how do you store it? I feel like, is it in a drawer? Is it on a dowel? Is it like, I kept on trying to figure out what was the best way to store my webbing. But then also have a space that worked also for apparel and like the other things that I wanted to do. So if you have recommendations for, you know, other storage ideas for webbing, definitely share them in the comments. The other thing, and here, let me move my laptop. I'm gonna have to move stuff around for you so I can show everything. The other thing, and this here I bought on overstock. So, and when I say overstock, I mean warehouse overstock locally. This is just, it's meant to be a spice cabinet. It's plastic. It's not super sturdy, but it does what it needs to do. I needed some place to put the things that I go for all the time. So this little pegboard thing that I had on the bottom worked really well. I could probably store some domestic thread on that top part if I needed to, if I ran out of place on my other pegboard. And then this slides up, and this is where I'm putting my woven labels, my cork labels, and my charms right now, just because I wanted some place that it was not on a table, that it could be put away, but like it's stored someplace. So it kind of looks like, gosh, there's not a whole bunch on there, but I've made myself a lot of space. So that's the other nice thing. In only 100-foot sewing room, I've made myself a lot more space. I also decided to move my little ironing mat, my wool ironing mat here with my little ironer, because I'm going to be quilting and it's nice to have someplace I can just scoot over, iron down the seam, and get back to sewing. So that's also something I wanted to have the space to do instead of pulling out my entire ironing board, because I really didn't have that before. So I don't know if you guys have a small ironing space, but it definitely it's been helpful already. Just having that setup right here has been really, really helpful, and I really like it a lot. So that's one thing. And that cabinet was really easy to put together myself. I do think sometimes when you're buying storage and furniture, sometimes it's like, oh, how is this going to go together? Am I going to need muscle? Both of those, that little flippy cabinet and that one, were not difficult at all to put together. And my husband did put it up on the wall just because he had to find the studs, because it's like an empty place. Because when we put the other cabinet up before, he was like, honey, what are you putting in this? I was like, I'm not going to put books or anything in it. And then he came up here and he saw all the stuff that was in it before I had cleaned it all out. And he was like, yeah, so nothing heavy, right? But yeah, so that's really been already a very helpful space. So that was one of the things, like I said, when I thought about what goals do I have, I knew I wanted some space where if I was working on quilt blocks or I was working on something that needed small ironing, that I didn't have to do that on top of my cutting table like I had been before and ruined multiple cutting mats because of the steam or the heat, that I could do it on this little piece here and be right here doing it. So that also was something that I worked on as part of my goals for the space. So one of the questions again, feel free to pop any questions you have. They can be about anything. They don't have to be about organizing. One of the questions from Instagram was, what was my inspiration to dye fabric and to start Thunderbird Handcrafted? Whew, that's a big one. So my inspiration to dye fabric was I had gone on a business trip to Alt Summit in Palm Springs in 2018. And part of that, it was like a marketing and sales, social media conference. And one of the things I have at Alt Summit was that you could go to your different conference talks and things like that, roundtables and things like that, that you were learning something specific about your job, but then you could fill in different places with something like fun. And one of them was indigo shambori dyeing. And I just fell in love with it. Like that, I just loved it. And came home and did it a bunch of times. I did it with my Girl Scouts a bunch of times. And then on my channel here, I decided, I'm going to do indigo shambori on the channel, just make tea towels. I had only ever done tea towels. I had not done fabric, which even though I was a sewist, I was like, I'm not going to do, like, I don't know why that thought didn't come in my mind until like 2021. But I had only done tea towels up to that point. And that was when So Magical was going on, and Kayla from So Magical had found me and asked me if I would teach at the Texas So Magical, and I decided to do that. But at that point, because like I said, I had never thought about doing it on fabric, and probably the reason I hadn't thought about doing it on fabric is that it is very difficult to find 100% cotton fabric that doesn't have any type of coating on it, even from Joann's. Like it just didn't dye well unless you can find some vintage cottons. It was very difficult. And so I had got fabric from a fellow small shop, and I had done the class, and it really didn't take well. So it wasn't that shop's fault. It was just like that fabric had already had some type of pre-coating for printing, and just didn't, it worked, but it worked to teach the class, but it didn't work, right? And so then after that, I still had a little bit of that fabric left, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to indigo dye it at home because I know I can fix all of the things for the most part to make it dye somewhat well. And I put it up on my website at the time that was really just to sell my bags and to sell like things that I made. And it sold out in like less than an hour. And I was amazed. And so it's still, I call it a happy accident. If I'm definitely a Bob Ross lover. And from there, then my husband was like, do you think you could do this? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I love doing it. I love dyeing, and I wanted to play with other types of dyeing and things like that. And we were lucky enough to find a manufacturer that's stateside that had raw fabric, raw cotton fabric, which is what I needed. And the rest is history. It just became, that became Thunderbird Handcrafted. So yeah. So that's a little bit about how this crazy train started. Yeah. Oh, Mary, she says she's donated Perch fabric to the quilt ministry and so with. Yeah, that's great. So feel free to pop any of your other questions in there. I'm going to continue on with the Creativity Corner organization. So the other thing I purchased, which I see a lot of people have a form of these, was a rolly cart. Because if you guys remember, I had my little boo bucket, my McDonald's boo bucket that had all my clips. I was always like, had so much stuff all over my table. I had a mug with some of my tools. Everything was always everywhere. If you watch any of the videos prior to this, you'll see. But the one thing I couldn't justify was like a big roller cart. Because I was like, I don't have space for a big roller cart like the ones you see at Michael's or at Walmart and stuff. So I found this narrow, and there goes my light. I found this narrow rolly cart. And it's just really thin, but it holds everything I need it to hold. All my clips, all my tapes, my posi pins for my Fabricator. I can even put my mug down there if I need to. But it's really, really nice. I have the link for this, and they had it in pretty colors. So that was the other thing. Like I said, stylish. I kind of have this like teal, mint green, coral thing going on in my sewing room. So I was able to get it in the mint green color that I liked. So that is, I have the link for that for Amazon if you need a thin roller cart, not a big one. And what's nice about it, I'm just fixing my light here. What's nice about it is it does fit really well. Here, I'll show you. I'll turn. Because when I'm sitting here sewing, I've been putting it like here like this. So when I'm sitting there sewing, everything is like right there. I can turn it a little bit so I can access everything. And it's really not in my way or in like the way of my knee lift or anything like that. So it's really, really nice. So if you need something like that, I highly recommend that. The other thing we did, so this here is where I have all my zippers. This was my fish hanger from my cruises. So what I decided to do was this here used to be for washi tape because I'm a big planner person. And it never worked really well for my washi tape. The washi tape was always falling off and Apollo was chewing my washi tape. So I was like, gosh, my zippers were a problem. It was it was one of those things like, look how many things of like gold, black zipper tape I have. I would purchase zipper tape thinking I needed it. Didn't need it, and that was because it was in this basket of my grandmother's that I would have to dig all the time to pull zipper tape out. So this just has dowel rods, and I don't know if you guys can see. So it has dowel rods, and then it has these little clips that are like screwed into there. I think they're meant for like hanging plants and stuff. But this is just a piece of wood that I covered with that sticky stuff, and then I put 2 of those clips and then a dowel rod. And now it works really well for my zipper tape because the dowel rod does not move other than pulling this clip out. And I can pull the whole thing out and get the zipper tape I want and then put it back. So I'm really happy with that. It sounds like a simple, weird little thing, but I'm really happy with that because now I can actually see it and use what I have. So the washi tape moved to my fish hanger. Also, these are a bunch of other double-sided tapes and stickies And I don't know, I put like little Velcro things that I put in there. So that's another little bit of organization. I changed around some books. So because I used to be, I'm gonna back up a little bit. Because I used to be in charge of thousands of women. I was their sales manager. I used to have a lot of my business books up there, and I'm not doing that anymore. And I'm actually glad that that season of my life is over. Grateful for it, but I'm glad that that season of my life is over. So my bookshelves here, I kind of changed around. I kept some books that were inspiring books to me, like Profit First is a great one if you run your own business. Hilda is from Coach Jenny, who was a personal coach of mine, business coach of mine, and I just love her book. It makes you laugh out loud. The Oprah, What I Know for Sure, is a really good inspirational book. And then I have What Do You Do with an Idea? It's a good book. It's a good book for kids too. And then I have my vintage Good Housekeeping magazine there. But then I just put some of my fantasy books. So I have some more to add here. But this book of gnomes is a book that my dad read to me when I was little. So I keep that here. But this was like I said, organization is not the only thing you need in your creative space. You do need creative inspiration in your creative space. And that's some of mine. Tell me what you have in your sewing room that you would call creative inspiration. Because I would love to know. I feel like those are some personality things that I would love to know what you have in yours, because I do think that those are really important. And by the time I got, so talking about like staying focused and like inspired to do more in your room than just like a quick cleanup. By the time I got to those shelves, one, when I saw how much dust was on them, that I had not cleaned that in a very long time, that one told me, boy, you really, these aren't being used. These books aren't being used. I had a lot of my herbal books. If you didn't know, I am an herbalist. I went through all the training to be a certified herbalist. Not that it's a real thing in the US, but it is a thing. And so I had all of those books. I had all of my Enneagram books when I went through Enneagram training. And I was just like, you know what? I don't use that a whole lot now. So let's move that out. So I'd love to know what you guys have in yours and just know a little bit more about like your personalities in your sewing room. And Patricia, hi Patricia. She said, I will send you pics of the paper towel magnet holder for your double-sided tape. Oh, cool. I turn it up and hang off the roll cart. Oh, they're from Harbor Freight. Very cool. Yes, I would love to see a picture of it. Really cool. So that's that area, kind of my inspiration area. Another thing that I had done, well, it's when I had taken a class with the girls from Salty Sews. So hi, Sarah and Debbie. And this is truly, I hadn't used it until I moved things around. And I highly recommend doing this pattern and having one of these for your sewing room, even if it doesn't travel with you anywhere, because I found it to be super helpful once I started organizing things. So this is the Everything But the Machine tote. Let me take my little pouch off. And so I sewed this on my domestic machine at Sew Magical. And so it has this little slip area that will go over my roller case. It has a little zipper here. I don't use really any of that part. And then it also, the flap, here, let me pick it up. The flap will actually hang down and you can actually put stuff in there, but I don't have anything in there right now. Really, this was something that I was like, I have a bunch of little stuff. So I have all of these like clips that are more for like clipping a pattern. I put those up top. All of like my extra tools that I have my good ones out, but I don't want to get rid of these, right? So I put those in there. All of my little templates I put in here because I use them, but I don't need them hanging up. It's fine that they're in storage. All of my needles. And then my extras for my Sailrite Fabricator. extra parts that I have. So that I put right here, and it's so nice. I've used it a bunch of times. I highly recommend something like that for like little stuff. And then I have my little pouch, my travel pouch is there in my drawers. So this was also something, I felt when I got to this part in the drawers, I was like, I've done enough, because I had pretty much done most everything except for the drawers. And I was like, I don't need to do these. But I felt so good when I did these drawers. So again, like I said, if you have things shoved away, I highly recommend biting it off and just doing it. So when I used to do a whole lot of planning, this side had a whole bunch of my planner stuff. And I reorganized it because I don't, look how narrow this is right now. I reorganized it. These are all planners and journals that I've wrote in or have already used. And then these are all of like manuals that I might need to get access to sometime. This here is all the stuff for my cork board or my pegboard in the back. So I don't always need to access that. And then this is all of my stickers for planning, which I don't sit and do a whole bunch anymore. I do occasionally, so I wanted them at the top, but that's that. Good question, Hazel. I'll answer that in a second. This here is all my binding machine stuff, which I do want access to, so that's in there. This here is all of like my letter writing. These are my kids' Valentines I want to mail to them. But this is all like stuff to write letters, because I write letters to my kids at college. And then this is all of my current journal, any of like pens and markers that I still want access to, you know, that sort of stuff. So this is stuff that I still want to be able to get access to, but it's put away. But that was it was like a junk drawer situation. And that was a lot. So if you have an area like that, which I feel like we all end up having, at least I hope so. I hope I'm not alone there. Just tackle it. Just sit one day and get it done, because you will feel so much better, and you'll have the things that you want to have accessible. And it's really nice. So Hazel asked, where do I put all my finished bags? Oh, Hazel, this is something. One of the reasons I started doing giveaways for my bags, because I don't sell them anymore regularly. But when I used to, I'll give you, when I used to sell bags at markets and things like that, I have 2 big Tupperware storage bins. It's actually where Apollo sits looking out the window. I have them covered with a blanket right now, and he sits and looks out the window on top of it. But they're 2 big heavy duty plastic storage bins that are on like rollers, because I used to take them with me to markets. That's where I used to put all of my finished bags, because I'd be working on them to finish them to take them to a market. So I highly recommend and it's, you know, even with the dog jumping up there and sitting on top, nothing's getting into them because they're closed. So I would highly recommend something like that, especially if you're doing markets, or even if you are selling them online. It's nice to have one of those bins that nothing can get into, so you don't have to worry about it getting dirty or anything like that before it sells. So that's, now look, when I make bags, a lot of times I do giveaways for them, just because I don't do markets as much. I didn't do any last year, which I think that was the first year in probably 10 years that I didn't do a market. But if I ever, that's where I've been continually to just put them. But I would highly recommend something like that. Just keep them nice until you're ready to sell them or they get sold. Okay. And if you have a dog, it's a great lookout. So yeah. I did get the question. I'll share another question quick before I get to the pegboard and like my desk area from over on Instagram. So one of the questions was, do you have a favorite fabric designer? Oh my gosh, there's so many good ones, and I feel like a lot of people want me to say Tula Pink, which Tula Pink, I do like her stuff, and I will be very honest. Tula Pink goes great with dyed fabric. If you have Tula Pink that you're like hoarding, use some of the dyed fabric you're hoarding with it. It just looks really good together. I don't have a lot of it. I have used Tula Pink. I do think she uses beautiful and innovative and is very creative colors. But I would say, and I'm always say his name wrong, but I would say, and it's why I have the machine I have, my favorite, and I'm going to just grab some of the fat quarters I have of his, if I can get in at it. Let me see if I can find them. I do really love Cafesat. I have a floral issue, probably because one of my first jobs was in a florist shop. My dad was a florist for many years, and I was the floral prep person, and I just love Cafesat. It's just gorgeous. I would say his go really well with my dyed fabrics as well. And it's actually one of the things, like, as I get into quilting, I want to use more of his with quilting, but both look really, really great with dyed fabric. And that might be the coloring and the kind of watercolory feel, or the brightness of both go really well with it. So yeah, that I do love Tula, but I feel like I really love his. Another fabric designer I really like is myself. And I know that sounds a little conceited, but one thing I really want to drive home with you all, one of the reasons I do this channel, and I think back to my 4th grade self of being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said I wanted to be an artist on TV, like Bob Ross. No joke. I could get my 4th grade yearbook out and show you the picture I drew. I really want sewists, bag makers, apparel makers, quilters. Your sewing is not just a craft, it is an art. And so I think so often, and I share this a lot over my Instagram account, I think so often we like 2nd grade our stuff because we think crafting, or the society has kind of made it like, oh, you know how to sew. You repair people's jeans, which is also an art. I do think it's really important to give yourself the credit of being an artist. So don't take your craft, your art for granted. Give yourself credit. All right, what's next? Lady Fair says she uses her calf, but she saves her Tula. Is there a reason? Do people think that the Tula fabric will be worth more someday? I don't know. I'm not fully in that world to know like what that is, but I will say this. Artists' work does go up in value when they leave this planet, but what I will say is the fashion industry is it's very difficult for that to be the case, if that's why you're saving it. Cut into your fabric. Don't hoard it. All right, let's go over here and I'll show you this next part of my sewing room. So my pegboard is something I did when I moved in here. So my husband, this was like my mother-in-law and I and my husband. So the top of this is an old countertop that my husband cut for me to have a cutting space. And of course it is becoming cluttered with things as I work on stuff. But the whole goal was that I would not have stuff sitting on this counter as I start to want to cut bigger things. And so some of this stuff is just projects that I'm getting ready to do. So I need to figure something out about that. But I kind of pulled a lot of the old things off of my pegboard. There were a lot of things that were just sitting there. There were things that were in these drawers that I was like, I want up here so I'm seeing it and using it. So I added more hooks because I want to get some more thread for my serger and for my domestic machines. I feel like I have plenty for my Fabricator, so I probably won't be adding there, but I do think I'll be adding here. I wanted a space for my long rulers. to be. And then all of these little containers that I used to put tags in originally, I added like my cam magnetic so I can see those. These little shelves, I used to have other junk on them. I brought my Mojo Sews, my edge painting. I don't even know what it is, you guys. I bought this stuff. I tried edge painting a couple times, felt like I was inadequate at it, and decided I wasn't going to do it anymore. But this year I am going to do more of it. I figure if I can see it, I'm going to do it. I organized this area here. And then the main goal was to really just have a better cutting space. But this we made. I just bought the pegboard at Lowe's. We put the frame around it, and my husband put it up for me. So that's that. More sewing, I guess, inspiration if you've never seen it. I'm a big Up fan of the movie Up. I bought that print at Disneyland from an artist. I just thought it was so cute. And then I have my little Up mountain and my picture of my grandparents who raised me. And then my little Seeker of Everyday Magic. And this should show you that I am an exennial. I've been bitten by mood poisoning. So yeah, so that's some of my inspiration there also. The other thing that I did was I purchased this. This was also on Overstock, and I don't know if I can back up far enough into the corner for you guys to see it all. But this used to be, if you can remember, there was a card table here. It's just an awkward size. Behind that door, I mean, behind that cabinet, that shelf is a door to our bathroom. Again, I live in an old farmhouse, so the upstairs is kind of like a roundabout type of thing. And that area is not, it's like not quite a yard. I think it's like 33 inches. And everything that we personally had either didn't fit there or was awkwardly fit and wasn't the right thing for what I needed it. Because I still needed a desk area, because sometimes to get away from the boys in my house, I'll come up here and do computer work. And like I needed a space that actually functioned as an office, but still worked in the sewing capacity. So I found this shelving unit. There's a bunch of different kinds. Like I said, I got this on Overstock, so I don't have a link for it. But I know Amazon has a bunch of like similar styles that are narrow like this. And what was nice about it is on either side of it had like a little bit of pegboard. So I put all of my like Ochre Roots templates I have here and my like templates that I use fairly often. All of like my hole and like my snap things are there so that they're not necessarily on this board. They're keeping this kind of open, but they're accessible right here, which I really loved. I bought these two that I'm waiting for magnets for. I think I'm going to put one here just to hold some other like templates and things like that. And then this other one I think I'm going to put on the one side of my pattern cabinet once the magnets come, because I didn't want to use the sticky things that they came with. And then on the top I put my binding machine and my Cricut and my llamas. I don't use my Cricut a whole lot anymore, so I put it up there because it's kind of, I'm not in that season right now. All of my bigger templates that didn't fit on the wall, my cutter, and then I just ordered a bunch of quilting rulers, you guys. So this is originally meant for like vinyls, but I'm gonna put all of like my bigger rulers here. And then I just got one of these guys for my Kindle, a page turner. Thank you to my bestie Amber. And then I put some inspiration here. So you guys all know I'm a Harry Potter crazy. So I have my Triwizard cup here. This is also my Up adventure jar. Some pictures, some things. This is future product. And And then all of my main sewing manuals are here. Notebooks that I use, my planner from last year, because I always reference my prior year's planner. And then under here also has pegboard, so I can use that pegboard as well. But what's great about this is this rolls in, but also rolls out. So it can become an actual desk, which I really loved. So this is like the creme de la creme of the room makeover, because it really was. And you guys, this is the thing, I really had to search for this, like the right thing. So if you have an area in your sewing room that you're like, don't settle for something, really do some research and like look for what you want, because this has made this whole room a space I want to spend time in again. So there's that. And then all of my hardware is here. So I used to have all of my hardware in just these things here, but they're not really great for things that are bigger, like your connectors and whatnot. So then I got this. I do have the link for this on my blog post. I got this on Amazon, and that has been really great as well to put more of like the bigger hardware. I don't really have anything in these bottom two drawers yet. I feel like those are going to become the junk drawer areas that in 4 years we'll be cleaning those out. But I haven't really, I feel like those are out of sight, out of mind drawers as well. The other thing that happened, and why I say this is like the creme de la creme and it made me so happy, as you're cleaning your space, you're going to have moments of glee. And one of my moments of glee was that my ironing board fits perfectly in there. And up until this point, I had no place. My iron board was always like awkward in my sewing room. And it has its own little loving space. My vinyl is just like everyone else's pretty much. I have one of these on the door. It's not ideal. I don't love it, but it works for what I need it to do. And that is pretty much, sorry, I was so close there. That's pretty much my Creativity Corner organized remodel. Oh, I'm stuck here. There we go. I'm just closing my cabinet quick. Yeah, so I really recommend, go over and read my blog post, because I do have some like other tips over there for different things. But I highly recommend doing this and doing it now. Like, don't feel because we're going into February that you don't have time to do this. I would highly recommend just take the time, because you're going to get so much more done. You're going to get so much more done in a way that makes you feel good if you do it now for this year. So I highly recommend it. Feel free to pop your questions in now, because I have a couple more questions that I got from Instagram that I'll answer, and we'll have a little bit of chat. Sandy says, I'm hesitant to cut it. Fear I pick the wrong pattern to use it. Girl, if you like the pattern, it's not the wrong pattern. So don't cut your fabric. Gail, good question, Gail. All right, I'm gonna come back to Gail's. Maybe that'll be the one we wrap this up with. But keep popping your questions in. I'll do another question from Instagram, and then I'll do a question from the live from you guys. Okay, so if you have questions, put them in now. And like I said, it could be anything about my business, about Apollo, about being a mom. It doesn't matter. Whatever you want to ask. All right, recommended starter patterns for new sewists. And I'm pretty sure this meant bags. I can only share with you where I started. And it's not a bias to them. It's just because it's where I started. I would say I was a fairly decent sewist before I started bag making, but I wasn't necessarily, like, I had never read a bag pattern before in my life. So the lingo in bag making is way different than the lingo in like your regular like Joanne Fabrics, McCall's patterns, right? And so Lindsay from Lynn's Handmade, I started with the H2O to go bag, of course. I think that's like, I feel like everybody knows it until, and then everybody doesn't know it until they know it. And then it feels like we've all known it forever. The H2O to go bag is such a good starter, I think, because one, it's a useful bag that isn't a normal bag, right? It's not a normal like handbag. And it is something that I feel is totally batchable if you're doing markets and things like that. So the H2O to go bag was one of my first ones. And then I did the square bottom hack as well on that, which was a good learning technique with that. I would say Spencer Og or Spencer Og, whatever, however you say it. Diane does such a good job in her videos. I would say this is where I kind of started watching more videos because you get a video with her patterns. Diane does such a good job teaching some techniques. So I would highly recommend Diane at Spencer Og, whatever you say, because of that, because she like takes the time to teach you like sewing around a curve or things like that. Like I just really feel like she does a really good job with that. So I would definitely recommend Spencer Og. And then I think the Tuesday Tote from Knotted Thread Co. I don't recommend all of her patterns for beginner sewists because I'm still learning a lot of her technique. But I do feel like the Tuesday Tote is a great bag pattern, and it's easy to follow. So those would be like, I would say those were the three I kind of started with. So I would recommend those three as well. Okay, so Gail's question, are you going to keep this room when you get your studio finished? If you're new to following me here, I have been, my husband has been working on a studio, a 2-story studio for me for the past 2.5 years. He works a full-time job. This is not his fault. He works a full-time job. What is his fault is he's stubborn and will not let anybody else build it for him. So he has been building the studio. We're hoping this summer, that's one of the reasons I'm not traveling to a bunch of shows this summer and things like that, is we really want to get it done to the point where we can at least move the business in by the end of this summer, because the business has just taken over our basement and other areas of our house. But we have talked about the second story, about how we would maybe like to convert that. So some of it will definitely have to be like storage, product storage and things like that. But the one end, I really would love if we could do it. I don't know if anybody's ever seen these, like they're like barn window doors that like it's a complete window, but it also opens as like a door. I would love for us to be able to put like a small deck and have one of those barn window doors, and that my sewing would be on that end of the studio. I would really love to do that. And I have shared that little dream with my husband, and he's played with it and kind of talked about how he would maybe do it. So we'll see. We'll see. For now, and I would say at least for the next 2 years, sewing is happening in this creativity corner and not in the studio. but yeah. Good question. Good question. I'll definitely let DJ know that someone asked. Oh, I did answer this already, but I'll answer it again. What was your first YouTube video? My first YouTube video was a floor pillow, a quilted floor pillow. So you can go back and watch that, please. Give me the love over on my first video. That would be amazing. And I will say I sold many of them. I had custom orders for them all the time. People really love them as holiday gifts, as birthday gifts, for everybody and anyone, from kids to yoga moms to everything. So yeah, it was a floor pillow. The pattern, I believe, is a Bernina pattern. Yeah, it is a Bernina pattern I found on Pinterest. If you don't follow me on Pinterest, go follow me on Pinterest. I've been putting things up on Pinterest now for a couple months. So yeah, and I really love making them. Actually, Apollo is using mine right now. It's on top of those bins, and he uses it as his little puppy bed. So I'll probably have to make one for myself someday. When eventually over in our bedroom, and maybe when I do that, I'll give you a tour of that. I would like to put a reading nook. We have like a little pushed out window area, and I would like to put a reading nook there. So that will probably be a big sewing project thing that I do eventually. Um, all these things I get to do now that my kids are in college. So yeah, floor pillow, it's a good one. I highly recommend doing it. Maybe if more people, maybe we could do a sew along. If people want to do it, I would gladly make another one. They're fun to make. Patricia, also pick a pattern that has a video with it. It helped me tremendously. Yeah, I think Patricia, like picking, I think it just really depends, right? Like I feel like when I first started sewing, um, it depends on how you learn too. Video is great though. I don't know what I'm saying. Video is great. I think that it is great to have video, and I think it is great to have those tutorials. And for the people who do those tutorials, like like I said, I have a lot of pre-recorded videos here. I was not the best at it, and that was one of the reasons I kind of stopped doing it. But the biggest reason I stopped doing it is it takes so much time. The people who are doing recorded, edited tutorials, which is not what you'll find here, at least not a lot of anymore. They're just spending so many hours editing and getting it right for you. And so I highly recommend, yeah, I think that's great to have when you're a beginner. What would we do without the School of YouTube? We wouldn't be here right now. Another question I have was, how many years have I been sewing? I have been sewing, like I said, it's over 20 years because my daughter's 20, she'll be 22. So probably 23 years, probably 23 years is what I will say, because DJ bought me my first sewing machine for Valentine's Day. Such a good guy. And I wanted to make curtains, because he had these ugly, like, deer curtains in the trailer. And I wanted to change that. So, yeah, about 23 years. If you have any other questions, I only have 2 more questions here, and I'll answer those quick from Instagram. And then if you guys have any other questions, feel free to pop them in the comments. What am I currently working on in my business? So this is a good one. And this is one of the hardest things, where my corporate fashion brain, I feel like it is a blessing and a curse. Because I learned a lot, working in corporate fashion, of how to plan out releases, and like how to know, like how far in advance does that start. But it's very difficult when you're the one person show. When you're in corporate world, you have the person who's the designer, who's the planner, who's the marketing person, the salesperson. I'm all of those things for the business. So it's really difficult when I'm in the middle of, like right now, we have our spring pre-order for 2025 going on. And so that will end on February 7th. So I just got everything released for spring, and I'm all excited about all the spring designs and like all of that. On top of that, I need to also be thinking about summer dyeing, right? Because if you know, if you've been here a bit, you know, all of my dyeing of fabric happens, most of it, even though I'm doing a snow dye right now, most of the dyeing happens in the summertime. And so I'm pre-planning right now, where we're getting ready to order all of our printed, dyed, raw white fabric. We're getting ready to order all of that for the summer. That will be all of the dyed fabric for the next year. So I'm working on that and deciding what colors we're doing and all of that. I also have to be thinking about, what are we doing in 2026? And so there's a little bit of 2026 stuff going on right now, which is crazy. But that's a little bit of what's happening in the business right now. And I'm it's hard, because you're so excited about right now, but then you get yourself pumped up about like what's going to come. And you want to share those things, but it doesn't make sense to share those things because we're right now. So yeah. So, that's what I'm doing. My brain is in a lot of places right now. And then how do you know what is going to be on trend months ahead of time? So this is also from my fashion background and working in corporate fashion. I worked in ethical fashion for 5 years. And I learned a lot there about how to spot trends, how to know what is going to be like the trend for the next season, and like what to follow and things like that. So when I said I went to Alt Summit, that was a big part of, like, some of that training happened there. And one of the reasons I said I'm over on Pinterest, I highly recommend getting off of your typical social media channels. I think that there is a lot of stuff that's great on those channels, but the ones you're going to find, what's going to trend eventually, are going to be ones that are more search engines versus posting places. And so that's like YouTube, Pinterest, things like that. So definitely looking more at search engine type of stuff versus what is being shown to you on the ones that are just posting places. So that's like one little tip. It's a lot. It was 5 years worth of education. So yeah. Anybody other questions for me today? I hope this was helpful. I hope this was fun. I hope that maybe we can do it again. I definitely, oh gosh, my brain already went blank. We talked about, for future just chat videos, what did we talk about? Oh goodness. Oh, we talked about like my setup for recording. I could talk to you about like what I used when I was doing pre-recorded stuff. I actually, until we have the studio, I'm not sure if I'll sell that stuff or not, but that's, a lot of that stuff is like packed away. I don't use it anymore, but I do have like the big rig thing that you can see like over the top of where I was cutting and all that stuff. I can share links for that in the future if you want me to. So I could do a video about that. Very basic, because again, I only did it for about a year. But I can show you what I use now just for my lives. And what else did we talk about? Oh, about designing fabric. Very basic there too, but I can definitely share that sort of thing. So I'll put those ideas down for future chat demo / things I know. If there's any other things that I know that you want to learn, feel free to pop those in the comments as well. I feel like this was a lot of fun. I hope you'll go over and check out the blog post. Feel free to comment over in the blog post with any of your ideas for organizing and things like that. I will say this about once you reorganize your space, and this is what I'll leave you guys with. It will take you a little bit of time to get used to it. So like my first, and kind of force yourself to get used to it, because my first sewing experience on my Fabricator, now that I moved her, because that was actually something we didn't talk about, that I moved everything around. And the reason I moved everything around is really that first point, which was what was my goals for 2025 in the space. But the first time I sewed with my Fabricator, I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, because none of my stuff was in the places that it used to be. But give yourself some grace and some patience and just keep at it. You'll get quicker. You'll get back to knowing where everything is. In the same way, like last week with my sewing on my domestic machine, sewing the Ray crossbody, you guys, I wanted to curse way more. And I didn't curse. And I was being really good about it, because I worry about little ears in the background. But yeah, that was an experience. But what that did is it taught me two things. One, my chair was way too low. I needed to lift my chair because my Fabricator is lower than this machine. So that was like just a simple thing. But then it also told me, you know what, I can do bags on this machine, but do I want to do bags on this machine? I don't need to do bags on this machine. I can do other things on this machine with you all. And so I did do a bag now live, and now we're going to do other stuff on that machine live. So just take your time learning your space. I hope that you will find, I hope you'll make your space yours this year. That's really my hope for you all, because this has really made me feel really good just for myself. And that's what you should feel when you're in your space. You just should feel like, it's home, right? So have a beautiful day. Have a beautiful weekend. I'm heading to take the youngest back to college. I will be an empty nester again. Starting tomorrow or starting this afternoon. Oh, it's so hard when they leave. It was hard when my daughter and her boyfriend left, and it's starting to realize that my son is leaving too. The house just won't have the same energy as what it had. But it's also a good thing, right? Because you know you did a decent job to a certain extent. But yeah, we're going to be sewing a bunch in February, just to give you guys a little bit of a rundown of what's happening here on the channel in February. So next weekend we will do a live sew. I'm not sure what yet, but we'll do something. So we'll be doing that. If I don't get my sweater done this week on my serger, then we'll probably be doing that, because that's the next project on my list, is my sweater. I know I've been saying it a lot, but it's going to happen. That's happening this week. So if I don't get there throughout the week, if there's too much work happening, then we'll serge a sweater next week. And then February 7th, which is the last day of our spring pre-order. So if you haven't got your spring pre-orders in, now is your time to do it, because February 7th is the last day. Get your fabric sample packs. I would say up to this Wednesday is probably the cutoff for fabric sample packs. If you don't have one, fabric sample packs, you definitely want one of those to get your pre-order in. But February 7th, the Bobbin Buddies will be going live. Katie, Jade, so Katie from My Little Shindig, Jade from the Heartwood and Hide, and myself. And we have a secret special guest. We are going to be sewing pouches. So if you want to do this with us, I'm going to announce this here, I guess. So if you made it to the end of this video, you're going to get to know what we're going to sew, and we're going to invite you to do it with us. So one of the things that I think this is probably part of my ethical fashion heart is all the natural disasters that happened in North Carolina, and then the fires in California. One of the things that immediately, when the hurricane happened first, I thought about it, and I was like, I don't know how to, I don't know anyone there to help me find where do I send it to. And I could have done some research then, and I kind of kick myself that I didn't. But I do know someone who lived in that area of California. Now, she moved to Florida, but she lived in the area that is totally gone now. And had connections with places and with different organizations. And so I reached out to her and I said, I know that people could use new toiletry bags. And I have this community of sewists who we all sew bags. Do you know any places that are taking new toiletry bags filled with new toiletries? And what are they asking for? And where could we say during a live, we're going to sew pouches. You fill them with whatever you want that's new stuff for toiletries, men and women stuff, and then here's some addresses of places that are accepting those donations. So I have been trying to compile those for both North Carolina as well as for California, and we're going to have that in the details of the Bobbin Buddies Bash so that all of us could sew pouches. So we're not going to tell you what type of pouch to sew. We're going to be sewing each different ones just like we do in every Bobbin Buddies batch. We just pick patterns that we like, but whatever pouch you want to make, and then if you want to join us in it, you can fill it with some new toiletries and choose one of the addresses that are in the details of that video and send them to those places, so that new toiletries are still needed in North Carolina and definitely needed in California. So that's something that we're doing. But like I said, I wanted to find the actual places that we're taking it instead of trying to just send it randomly, just because I know from you want to know the source that it's going to. So we will be doing that. So that's the Bobbin Buddies Bash on February 7th. Then on Galentine's Day, I will be sewing live with the Salty Sews girls, with Debbie and Sarah from Salty Sews. So we're going to be doing a live. We're going to sew the Last Minute Leslie. I'm trying to think if I have any other days that I'll be sewing live. The only other thing that's happening in February is my birthday's in February too. So keep that in mind. Because we'll probably do something pretty big. We'll probably do some fun stuff for my birthday. I don't know if I'll go live, but we'll probably do some fun stuff on like the website with sales or something like that. So that's that. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. I hope you have a beautiful Sunday. And remember, sewing is, well, crafting is the healing part, but sewing is too. And being with friends. Sewing with friends is the healing part. All right. See you, everybody.